Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we're going to be continuing our What If Naruto Was Trained by Doctor Strange, Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 5. But as always, if you like today's video and all the other content that we have on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, please check out yesterday's video upload as we continued What If Issei Was the Shield Hero, High School DxD, Dragon's Rage, Season 2, Part 2. Now, you might be wondering why Naruto Mystic Adventures is had today and not on Friday. Well, that is because we are no longer continuing What If Naruto Was the Avatar. So, in its place, we have moved What If Naruto Was Trained by Doctor Strange from Fridays to Tuesdays. So, you'll have this to look forward to now. And as for what we will be doing on Friday, we're going to be starting What If Issei Was the Ghost Rider, High School DxD Spirit of Vengeance. So that's going to be taking over the Friday slot. In case you are not aware, that is the updated schedule for everything on Power Core Productions and Podcastings. But if there's any other news or any other information, just continue to watch the community tab and I'll post any other changes as we go along. But anyway, without further ado, we're going to get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. With 1 month until the finals of the Chunin exams, Naruto and the others would seek out their own various methods of training in order to prepare and get stronger for the final rounds that were to come. Our story starts with Sakura Haruno, as she had, along with the sensei she was training with, Koronai, had gone to a rather shady home in the outskirts of the Hidden Leaf Village. There, they met a woman named Agatha Yue, her formerly known name, Agatha Harkness. Now, you may be wondering, how is Agatha in this world? Where did she come from? Which version of the famed sorceress is this? Well, this is a variant of Agatha. She came from a world unknown to many others. A world where the Marvel heroes did exist. However, that world came to an end. A strange being one day, almost as if a man from a different time altogether, overtook, and you could say, conquered their world. While Agatha was a powerful magic user, she wasn't on par with the likes of Doctor Strange and Dormammu, or even the Scarlet Witch for that matter. Her magic came at a limit, if you will. Agatha understood the dangers of using magical energies on a multiversal level, and as such, she never tried to obtain such power. Of course, she understood it. She knew enough of it to train and prepare anyone else. But the very idea of trying to gain all of that power really wasn't something that suited her. In a last-ditch effort to escape, she took what little she had and just ventured off into the multiverse. By chance, she came into the Naruto world, 50 years before the start of our series began. In this world, she met a young man from the Yue clan, and decided to settle in the Hidden Leaf Village. She got married and raised a family. Of course, the family had long since gone their separate ways, but Koronai was still someone that she held very dear to her, and someone that she would visit from time to time. Agatha had come to understand this world and the things in it. She knew of the beings known as the Jinchuriki and other things. She was even there during the night of the Nine-Tails attack. Of course, she had no idea how to handle such a beast, but she did help others in escaping, believing that the Hokage was more than powerful enough to deal with it on his own. And also, she liked to not use her magic as much, seeing as how the use of magic could often attract other magic users. And the last thing she wanted was to attract a stray demon, or God forbid if someone like Dormammu or even Mephisto or anyone along those lines were to catch sight of her presence, and then bring all of their troubles into this reality. But at the behest of her granddaughter, as she knew a little of her grandmother's past, but not enough, she wanted to have help with training Sakura. As Sakura met them, the moment Agatha held her hand, she felt a feeling that she hadn't felt in a long time. It was as if she were standing in front of her again, although it couldn't be because she knew for a fact that it wasn't. But yet the power radiating from her, there was no denying. If she didn't know any better, she would swear she was in the presence of Wanda Maximoff, otherwise known as the Scarlet Witch. However, how she was able to obtain this power, she had no clue. But she knew that the girl had potential and needed to be trained. And as such, she sat down with Sakura and Kurenai and decided to reveal with them the truth of her origins, where she came from, what she knew, and how she knew it. This surprised not only Sakura, but Kurenai as well, to have no idea that her grandmother had done all of these amazing things, and even more so that she were someone akin to Naruto in a sense. But now it all made sense. It also explained why she was born with a strong aptitude for genjutsu, as it wasn't too far off from her magical abilities. At the same time though, for Sakura, she wondered if maybe this were starting to be too much for her. Thankfully, she had had help from Naruto in learning the basics, but at the same time, there was still more to it than even she realized. However, Agatha would assure her that as long as she learned control, then everything would be fine. She could tell that she had a great deal of power within her. As such, their training would begin for the 1-month time period. With Kurenai, Sakura would learn different types of genjutsu and better ways to implement them, while at the same time, Agatha would teach her to combine her chaos energy. When doing so, within the genjutsu realm, her opponent would not only be affected within the realm, but also within the mortal plane. This did, however, have one caveat. Whenever she did this, she would leave her mortal body exposed, and this could lead to potential harm. So she had to be very careful and pick her spots when using the genjutsu. Her constructs were also in top form, similar to Naruto's, except hers was a scarlet red compared to his natural orange. Among these other areas, she also improved in her shinobi training, including in wire walking, in kunai and shuriken practice, as well as all of the other basics that all ninja must know. And all in all, Sakura increased in strength as time went on. As for Naruto, his training with Ebisu-sensei went about as well as you could have hoped. It wasn't that Naruto didn't dislike it, it was just that in the end, he didn't think he got much from the elder sensei in the first place. Sure, wire walking was cool, but in the end, he could just make portals if he needed to, although this did help much neededly though with his chakra control. Eventually, while training, they would make their way to the hot springs, and this would still lead to Naruto meeting with Jiraiya as he did before. As Naruto and Jiraiya had now gotten the chance to meet one another, it was then decided that Jiraiya would take over his training for the 1-month period, until the Chunin exams finals. While training, Jiraiya would learn about Naruto, more so than what he had gotten from the third Hokage, getting a chance to see his skills up close and personal for the first time, seeing everything that this Dr. Strange had to teach him. He was absolutely enamored with Naruto's abilities, so much so that he even started to debate whether or not Naruto might be the child of prophecy. But that was something he would hold off on for now. In terms of what he could teach him outside of the water walking exercise, after having the 5-pronged seal given to him by Orochimaru removed, they would then focus on drawing out the power of the Nine Tails. In doing so, this would increase Naruto's aptitude for the summoning jutsu, making a contract with the Toad Sage of Mount Miyaboku. In doing so, Naruto was able to use the extra power given to him, along with his own increase in strength from his chakra reserves, and he was able to use it to summon Gamabunta, the chief toad. Jiraiya was absolutely impressed with Naruto and his ability, seeing him as a prodigy, much like his father was. Thankfully, they still had a little time left, and Jiraiya decided that there was one thing that he did want to teach Naruto, a ninjutsu that he could add to his arsenal, as he didn't want Naruto to become too reliant on magic. And this jutsu would be one that he learned from the third Hokage, and this jutsu was the Shuriken Shadow Clone technique. But then finally, there came Sasuke. Sasuke wasn't sure of how he should train, or what he should prepare for. He didn't know who his first round opponent would be until the day of the exams. He would either be facing Neji Hyuga or Rock Lee, both of whom had surprisingly dangerous techniques. While training with Kakashi, they decided to focus on Sasuke's strength and speed. Using the Sharingan, Sasuke had been able to see and observe Lee's movements during the preliminary rounds. As he did so, he was able to copy Rock Lee's speed. Doing so was able to build up his own speed reserves, training him up so that he could use the Chidori with efficiency. On top of his taijutsu and speed training, he also had the mastery over the two Tomoe Sharingan, unlocking them both the right way, and practicing with Kakashi, who had a Sharingan of his own. He also took to mastering the overdrive as well, the lightning style cloak level 2, as this could be the added boost that he needed in battle. All in all, they improved his overall skills, until eventually he had a good balance over everything. That way he would be prepared for the cunning of either the Byakugan user, or of that of the taijutsu specialist. Of course, for Sasuke, he was excited either way. The prospect of facing a strong opponent definitely intrigued him enough. And with that, Team 7 would work on their various training methods, each one improving and getting stronger in their own ways, preparing as the finals of the Chunin exams were soon upon them. Eventually, the day of the Chunin exams would be upon them. Naruto had already gone to where the exams were going to be held, so he wasn't in such a rush to get there, since he could make a portal to get there instantly. He chose to sleep in, thinking on and on about his upcoming fight. He didn't know much about Gaara, although he could sense that there was something about him, something dangerous. He had seen what his sand was capable of, and he knew that if he wasn't careful, this might be the end of him. Although he had been in worse situations and come out of it so far. All the same, he slowly got up and ate his breakfast, before getting dressed, and as he made his way to the door, he would use the sling ring and move his hand in a circular motion. The portal would open up to the front entrance of the exam building. With one quick step, he was already where he needed to be. As he looked around, he could see the crowds already gathering inside of the stadium. As he made his way towards the other contestants were going to be held, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. As he turned to see where it was coming from, he would see a girl, a bit taller than him, running towards him. She was dressed in the Konoha shinobi uniform, and she had a headband wrapped around on her arm. As she ran over towards him and gave him a hug, it took Naruto a brief moment to realize that it was Haku. This instantly made his day, as he held her rather tight, happy to see her again. He was surprised that she had been let out so soon, but how had she already gotten a shinobi uniform? Haku would tell Naruto the news. They were still going to be on probation for a while, her and Zabuza, but after taking the aptitude test, it was determined that she was already Chunin level. She was going to be supervised by a few other Konoha Jonin for at least 2 years, but with their permission, she could start doing missions now. Naruto was extremely happy for her, although a bit bummed out that she didn't even have to go through the Chunin exams, and yet she was already going to be a Chunin. Although all the same, just seeing her again was more than enough. However, he did feel one ominous presence though. It came the moment that Naruto and Haku had looked at each other for a bit too long, and the debate of whether or not they were going to kiss. The second before any of that could go down, a rather large and taller man would be standing behind him, also dressed, a lot similar to that of Kakashi, although his face was still wrapped in bandage. It didn't take Naruto long to realize that that was none other than Zabuza, who was standing closely behind him, waiting to see what he was going to do next to Haku. Naruto slowly turned around to see the large towering shinobi in front of him, and his deadpan stare was more than enough for Naruto to want to run away. As Naruto ran back into the stadium halls, Haku would wave to him, asking and telling him good luck. Naruto telling her thank you as he continued to run. As she and Zabuza watched him enter into the stadium, Haku would give Zabuza a rather mean look, asking why he had to scare her like that. Zabuza would explain that if he were going to be a good caretaker now, and actually look after her well-being, then he couldn't just allow her to fraternize with just anyone, even someone like Naruto, especially someone like Naruto. As Naruto made his way in, he would see the other combatants all gathered together in the middle of the stadium. He would go over to Sakura, as he was happy to see her, and she had a new outfit. It was something that she had gained from her training along with Kurenai and with Agatha. She had a black dress now, instead of the red one that she normally wore, and she wore shinobi boots, similar to the ones that she would wear in Shippuden later on. On top of that, she also had a rather deep crimson red jacket, along with black fingerless gloves. And finally, her headband was still the same as before, although now the cloth was a rather pinkish red instead of the blue. As she turned back to Naruto, she was happy to see him, and she introduced him to Kurenai as well as Agatha, Yue. The moment Agatha got to see Naruto, everything for her changed in that instance. It didn't take a rocket scientist for her to see that Naruto was dressed very similar to a certain someone that she once knew. His robes and garb were much akin to that of Dr. Strange, except for the fact that the blue was instead orange now. With that, it all became clear. The presence that she had sensed a little over a year ago, it had been him. Somehow, a version of Strange had gotten to this world and was training Naruto. As she walked towards him, she would shake his hand and smile kindly. in a way giving off that she kind of knew who was training him. But Naruto didn't pick up on that right away, although he could definitely sense that there was something about this old woman. Something that also felt familiar. However, for Sakura and Naruto, their joyous reunion was short-lived, as a rather serious conversation had to be had. Sasuke wasn't there. They couldn't see him, and for all they knew, they didn't know where he was. Although he couldn't possibly be late, he wouldn't miss the Chunin exams. That just didn't sound like Sasuke at all. But yet as they looked around, they realized he was running late. Thankfully, they didn't have to worry about that right away, since the wildcard matches would have to be held first, before the first round could officially begin. Sakura would jokingly say that if she needed to, she could drag out the fight if she had to, at the very least until it could give Sasuke enough time to show up. As the contestants were quieted down, their proctor, Genma, would look out and announce that the wild cards for the Chunin exams were now going to begin. And with that, the first match would take place, that being Neji Hyuga versus Rock Lee. The winner of this match would go to the first round to face Sasuke Uchiha. Neji was rather proud and arrogant of himself, believing that Lee had always lost to him time and time again, and that now things would be no different. However, Lee was oddly determined. Not only would he get a chance to face his Rookie of the Year from his class, but if he won, he could move on and face the next Rookie of the Year, defeating two prodigies from two powerful clans, to show that someone, even without ninjutsu or genjutsu, could still be a splendid shinobi. This was everything he had ever dreamed of, everything he had ever wanted in his life, and now it seemed as though his destiny was now paved out in front of him. The match would start with Rock Lee attempting to go on the offense. He would go for a running kick towards Neji, but Neji would block using the 8 trigrams rotation. Using the spinning, Lee would be thrown back to the ground. Neji, feeling as though he had the higher ground, would put himself in the superior edge of the fight. However, this would not determine Lee at all. As the others watched on in the crowd, Lee would still continue on his assault, although Neji would still be able to block every one of his attacks using the rotation and the Byakugan. The fight seemed to stall for a bit though, where it seemed as though Neji held the advantage. Lee was merely pacing himself to see just how far he could go in the fight. When Neji would continue to berate Lee, telling him that he didn't stand a chance of winning, that was when Lee would retort, telling him that he had been training for this moment, and that while he wasn't going to do anything too harmful, he was going to humble him just a bit. Lee would undo the bandages around his arms, now knowing that the conditions had been met for him to use this technique. He would get back before getting a running head start towards Neji. He moved as a green blur, and Neji would have no way to see where he was or where he had gone, before eventually Lee would appear right underneath him and kick him in the face, sending him high into the air. Lee would continue these kicks and barrages immediately, kicking him higher and higher over and over again. The damage that was being done to Neji was more than what he was expecting. He didn't know that Lee had this kind of power. Before he knew it, his body was wrapped around by the bandages, and Lee, with one good placed strike from both his knee and his elbow, would drive them straight into Neji's gut and send them flying down into the bottom of the arena, crashing into a crater completely unconscious. For many in the crowd, they would be absolutely stunned. The fact that a prodigy like Neji Hyuga, the former Rookie of the Year, had lost to someone who had neither ninjutsu nor genjutsu and only relied on taijutsu was a feat to be truly amazed with. As for Neji, as he slowly came back to. He had no idea that Lee had been holding that much back for so long. He had felt absolutely foolish. He felt as though everything that he had stood for had been, well, destroyed. Although, Lee was not mean-spirited, and even though Neji had been a jerk, he believed that it was only because of Neji's past, and that deep down, the two of them could start anew. Lee would help him up and tell him that it was alright to feel the way that he felt, but instead of only wallowing in his own sorrow, he should use it as motivation to do better. Neji would take these words to heart, and while the process would be slow, eventually, maybe things could change for the better. With that, Lee would help Neji to the infirmary, giving him a chance to recover. And with that, Rock Lee would advance to the first round against Sasuke Uchiha. After a brief intermission, the second wildcard match was going to begin. However, there was one small problem. As Sakura looked around for her opponent, an announcement would come immediately that her opponent, Dosu, was not going to be participating and had in fact dropped out. Now that she thought about it, and everyone else, Dosu never arrived to the arena. You might be wondering what happened to Dosu. Where exactly did he go? Well, Dosu was looking for the fastest way to get to Sasuke. He thought that if he could take out the competition early, then that would give him a one-way ticket towards the Uchiha. First, he looked for Sakura, but he was unable to find her. He then looked for Naruto, but Naruto was closely with Jiraiya, and he knew that to try to fight the Sannin would lead to his death. But finally, he did find someone who was in the same bracket as him, and that was Gaara. However, attempting to fight Gaara proved to be his biggest mistake, and one that he would not live to regret. And with that, the official 15-minute intermission would be held, and after that, the first round would officially begin. Both Naruto and Sakura looked around nervously. Sasuke still hadn't shown up, and he only had 15 minutes to get to the arena, or else he would be automatically disqualified. The other ones all looked around also, a bit perplexed and worried. Especially Lee, since he was looking forward to this match. Just as it got under 5 minutes, and now the anxiety was starting to grow even more throughout the arena, a swirl of leaves would appear in front of the middle of the stadium. And out of nowhere, Kakashi and Sasuke would appear. Both Naruto and Sakura would run towards him immediately, yelling at him in unison for showing up so late, but Kakashi would assure them that everything was fine. You see, they were on their way to arena, but then an old lady needed help crossing the street, and then a black cat walked their path, and then Sakura and Naruto would both simply yell at Kakashi to stop making up stupid excuses. However, Sasuke would simply look towards his teammates, and he asked them if they were all going to the first round together, to which they both nodded. Sasuke liked this. He felt as though now their team were truly growing stronger, and he was going to get a chance to show what he could do. Lee would then make his way down to the arena floor as well, followed by his sensei, Guy. As Guy, Kakashi, Lee, and Sasuke stood across from one another, it seemed as though the culmination of their rivalry was about to come to a head. For Kakashi and Guy, they had both trained their students for this moment, as the two were going to go head to head, as the first round match was about to begin. A smirk would appear on both of their faces, as the two of them would immediately engage in a flurry of taijutsu. It became very clear right off the jump that Lee was not playing any games, and Sasuke knew he was going to have to be on guard if he wanted to win this fight. The two of them would match each other in speed initially, although Sasuke had the brief advantage for a moment, getting in a few extra quick kicks at Lee's midsection before sending him back. Lee would compliment him on his speed getting up a lot faster, and he was definitely making this more intriguing. As the two went on once more, Sasuke decided that it was time to use his advantages. After creating distance once again, he would use the Phoenix Flower Jutsu, creating multiple fireballs that would go flying towards Lee. Lee would dodge them as he went moving about all throughout the arena floor. Sasuke, creating more distance, would use more fireballs as he could, attempting to catch Lee off guard. Once Lee was up in the air, Sasuke would join him and hit him with a flurry of kicks, using a technique that he had developed from watching Lee in his battle, what he called the Lion's Barrage. Lee could definitely see that Sasuke had heavily taken from his taijutsu, another trick to the Sharingan, he supposed. However, in the end, it was nothing but tricks. The Sharingan was only good for copying techniques, and while he had to commend Sasuke for making it his own, in the end, there were just some things that you just couldn't get using the Sharingan, and Lee was going to make that very clear. Without hesitating, Lee would start to ramp up the intensity. With each punching kick sent Sasuke's way, he could feel the full weight behind it. He could feel all of the intensity, all of the training, everything that Lee had gone through all of those years. All of that hard work boiled over into his fists, into his legs. And with each attack, Sasuke got the full brunt of it. The crowd were starting to become a bit in awe of what they were seeing. Not only had this young man defeated a Hyuga prodigy, but now he was taking on one of the last Uchiha. The Uchiha who were seen to be the elite among the shinobi world. This now had more eyes on Lee than ever before. This boy truly could not use ninjutsu or genjutsu, and yet he was fighting against two shinobi who came from arguably two of the strongest clans in all of Konoha. This was definitely a sight for sore eyes, and a fight that wouldn't soon be forgotten. Sasuke knew that he had to match Lee with speed and with strength, and with that, Sasuke would activate the Overdrive Level 2, as sparks and crackles of lightning would shoot and form all around his body. He would turn into a black flash as he went rocketing straight towards Lee. Lee didn't know that Sasuke had this level of speed and strength, and it felt as though now he were matching him as well. As the two continued to trade blows, Sasuke, using his Sharingan and the Eye of Perception, would be able to evade a few of Lee's strikes, almost as if he could see them before they happened, and he countered with his own. Lee would attempt to go for a Leaf Hurricane kick, but Sasuke would duck down below. Before Lee could even hit the ground, Sasuke had moved behind him and jumped backwards. Lee attempted to block from the left, but Sasuke switched at the last moment and went to the right. You could say that he had jumped and hit him with a backwards enziguri, kicking him directly in the head and shooting him towards the ground once again, as Sasuke would flip into the air before lowering his leg down towards Lee's midsection. Lee would cough up some blood instantly, as Sasuke would pick him back up once again and throw him like a rag doll into the side of the wall. As Lee got back onto his feet, Sasuke was still standing at the ready, and this was where his arrogance got the better of him, for he got into the same stance that Lee normally did. Holding his hand forward, he ushered him to come. Lee was starting to get a bit angered now. He felt as though now his ninja way was being mocked, and as he looked up towards Guy had a serious expression on his face. He merely nodded, and Lee knew it was time. Lee would then climb up the side of the wall that he had been thrown into, and Sasuke would wait on the ground, asking him what he was going to do. While sitting on top of the wall, Lee would remove his leg warmers before taking off both of his weights. Kakashi had a deadpan expression. He knew that Lee trained like Guy the old-fashioned way, but he didn't think that they would go that far. Although he was starting to get a bit unnervous now. If Lee was taking off the weights, then it meant he was getting serious. Sasuke remarked that taking off some weight wasn't going to do him much good here, but Lee simply dropped the 2 weighted leg warmers down to the ground, and the moment they made contact, 2 large smoke clouds appeared, bellowing and shooting up high, almost over the arena wall itself. Sasuke became a bit unnerved by this. Did he really have that much weight on him? And if he did, just how fast was he about to get? Well, Sasuke was about to figure that out firsthand. Because before he knew it, a green blur would appear right in front of him, hitting him with a devastating combination of taijutsu attacks, kicks and punches from every angle. Sasuke had no way of perceiving where they were going to come from next. It looked as though there were 10 Rock Lees all at once, but no, there was just one, and he was just that fast. Before Sasuke could counter again, he would have to use the overdrive just to barely keep up with Lee now. Their speed had now gone from being just about even with Sasuke holding the advantage, to now Sasuke was just lagging behind. It was as if every time Sasuke went for an attack, he would punch a Lee only to see that it was an after image. He was trying to attack where Lee was, but every time he did, Lee was already gone. As their fight continued, Lee would get behind Sasuke at the last moment, Sasuke starting to get unnerved at who he was fighting. Is that really all you got? No, Sasuke, not even close. You want to know your mistake? And what's that? You keep trying to attack me where you think I am, but I'll let you in on a little secret. By the time you see where I am, I'll already be gone. Sasuke would use this moment of conversation to go in for a punch, knowing full well that Lee couldn't have moved that fast, and when he punched, he thought that he had punched him in the face, but no, his fist went right through Lee. When Lee had told him those very words, he wasn't there anymore. Lee would turn back to being in front of Sasuke. As Sasuke looked down, Lee would kick him straight into the air. It was now time to use the primary lotus. He gave him multiple primary lotus kicks high above the arena itself, before wrapping his entire body in bandage, although this time, unlike with Neji, he was holding him. The dancing leaf shadow, followed by the spiking pile driver, or the primary lotus that was about to hit straight towards the ground. However, for Lee, to use that technique in quick succession, it caused him some pain. He closed his eyes at the last moment before making contact with the ground, and it was at that moment that Sasuke escaped, using a substitution. The two of them felt as though their power was well spent. They had no idea how much they had left to give, although for Lee, he felt himself collapse to the ground in pain. The primary lotus that bloomed twice, it still served as a double-edged sword, and the initial use left him tired. As Lee was slowly getting back up to his feet, from behind him, he could hear the crackle of lightning. For just less than 25 feet away, Sasuke had prepared the Chidori. He was going to hit him in the leg, to try to take him out of commission for this fight. Sasuke, using the Sharingan, would get his target locked straight on Lee, and would go charging straight towards him, Both Guy and Kakashi were shocked. They had no idea that Sasuke would use that technique to go this far in the fight. Kakashi personally believed that he didn't need to use the Chidori, but the fact that Sasuke felt he needed to was a testament to just how strong Lee truly was. As Sasuke went charging towards Lee, Lee would use what little strength he had. He would turn at the last moment, avoiding the fatal strike to his leg. He would lower himself and take the brunt of it in his left shoulder. Being pierced by the Chidori, Sasuke would see that he had missed his mark. But Lee, he used this to his advantage. He would jump and deliver a bicycle kick to Sasuke's face, knocking him back over into the wall once again, as Lee went falling down as well. The two combatants not even getting up. Genma would start the 10 count. If neither one of them could get up by then, this would be a double knockout and the both of them would be eliminated. Although, as the count reached to 8, Lee would get back onto his feet once more, and Sasuke would crawl out of the hole and would be standing up as well. The brutality of this fight was more so than what anyone was expecting. No one believed that they were truly going to go this far to defeat one another. But this definitely did bring the approval from the crowd. Even among the special VIPs, as the Hokage and the Kazekage watched from their deluxe seats in the main tower. The Kazekage was absolutely enamored, not just with Sasuke, but with Lee as well. They knew that they didn't have much left to give, and Sasuke would tell Lee that he was going to finish this with his next attack, and Lee told him that he would do the same. As the two stood on opposite sides of the arena, Lee would cross his arms together as he would begin to invoke that technique. And as for Sasuke, he knew that what he was about to do might cost him everything, but he needed the power. He could tell firsthand that whatever Lee was, it was going to take more than what he had to defeat him. Both Kakashi and Guy looked on worried. They weren't sure of what to do. They trusted that their students knew what they were doing, but at the same time, this was starting to become a bit too much. The arena would slowly start to shake, as Lee would start to invoke the power of the 8 inner gates, opening not just the first, but the second, followed by the third, and then the fourth. His muscle fibers would begin to twitch and to tear, his veins beginning to bulge out of his skull, his skin starting to turn a bright red as a green light began to form around him. His eyes became completely whited out as they started to glow, and steam appeared to be coming from his body. And as for Sasuke, he looked deep into that dark place within his soul. He knew the power was there. He just needed to call on it. And as he did so, his body would start to become taken over, as the black curse mark began to take effect. His Chidori, the last one he had in his arsenal, it started to change color, from its bright white with a blue hue, to that of dark crackling lightning. The crowd looked on, a bit horrified, really, to see that these shinobi had this much destructive power. There was no telling what they were capable of. Both Lee and Sasuke prepared for the final charge. Guy and Kakashi, they knew they had to stop this, and they went running to get their students out of the way immediately. But before they could get there, they had already begun their charge. Lee went running straight towards Sasuke, and Sasuke went running straight towards Lee. As Lee cocked back his fist, he was going to punch that Chidori straight through. And as for Sasuke, his Chidori was going to clash with Lee's fist. As the two met in the center of the arena, Lee and his now enclosed fist, empowered by the 8 inner gates, would collide with Sasuke's Onyx Chidori, as the green and black energy would swirl and move around before a large explosion would take place in the center of the arena. A large dust cloud would form around everyone and everything. No one could see what was happening. They could just hear the power exploding over and over again. Sasuke tapped into the curse mark and poured everything he had into this attack. Lee had already used 5 of the 8 inner gates, but right as they made contact, Lee allowed his trump card to come into full effect, as he roared for the 6th gate. The moment he activated the 6th gate, it increased the durability of his fist. As he punched the Chidori, Sasuke's right arm was completely shattered and broken, as was Lee's, as his skin was absolutely burnt and charred. However, he wasn't done yet. As Sasuke yelled out in pain from his broken arm, Lee, using his last free hand, would grab him by the collar and would knee him in the gut over and over again, before kicking him straight into the air over the dust cloud. Lee, however, had one bandage tied to his foot, and as Sasuke saw this, Lee tugged and he was dragged straight back down to the ground. As Sasuke went rocketing straight towards the arena floor itself, Lee would be waiting, with the power of the 8 inner gates starting to fade from him fast. He charged one final kick into his leg. As Sasuke was about to make contact with the ground itself, Lee would jump into the air, allowing for Sasuke to pass him, before coming right back down with his leg, slamming him into the floor with authority. With that, Kakashi and Guy would arrive. Moving through the clouds, they would go to where their students were immediately. As the dust settled and everything cleared, they could see one figure standing and the other one on the ground. They would see that it was none other than Lee, as he stood, shaking, wobbling. His arm and leg seemed to be completely wrecked. However, he still stood tall, and on the ground lay Sasuke Uchiha, completely knocked out. The crowd would roar and cheer in approval for the match. Not only had Lee defeated the Hyuga, but now he could add Uchiha to that list. He was absolutely drained and had nothing left to give, and as he felt he were about to fall, Guy would be there immediately to pick him up and carry him. While he would have to admonish Lee at the same time, he was proud of him, for he had not only fought him, but he had defended his ninja way. And as for Kakashi, he would pick up Sasuke. The curse mark thankfully receded back into its seal, but he could tell now that Sasuke had to rely on the curse mark, and he was able to tap into its power, however brief. He knew that this could be troublesome, and now even more precautions were going to have to be taken in the future, as both senseis carried their students to the infirmary. Everyone else in the stands, including Naruto and Sakura, they were absolutely amazed. They were shocked that Sasuke had lost, but what was even more surprising was just how strong Lee truly was. He was definitely not someone to take lightly. With the first match of the first round now over, Genma would keep things moving going into the second match of the first round. This would be Shino versus Kankuro. However, before the bout could begin, Kankuro would immediately drop out. He didn't state his reasoning, but none needed to be given, and with that, Shino would get the win and would advance to the second round. Now looking on, It was now time for the third match of the first round. Naruto would wish Sakura luck, and Sakura thanked him as she jumped from the arena setting down to the floor. It looked like it had been absolutely destroyed in a brutal war, and she could see that someone else was floating down in front of her. It was none other than Temari. As she set her fan on her side, both she and Sakura were now standing face to face. Temari wishing her good luck, and Sakura did the same, both Kurenai and Agatha watching on intently. As now, the third match of the first round was about to begin. Sakura Haruno versus Temari of the Sand. This concludes What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange? Naruto Mystic Adventures, Part 5. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we're going to be continuing What If Deku Was the Son of Rock Lee? My Hero Academia Fighting Spirit, Part 5. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.